Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a getting to know you video. It's been a little while since I did a video like this and just kind of explain why we started homeschooling and why I started a YouTube channel. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you enjoy that type of content and other homeschool content, remember to subscribe and let's get into it. Okay, so I'm mostly going to talk about why we started homeschooling and why we keep homeschooling, and then that led to YouTube stuff. But I wanted to start with just a few little things if you're new here or if you haven't seen any of my older videos that talk a little bit about our family. So I have been married for almost 14 years. My husband and I were missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we met as missionaries in Florida, and his family lived in California but had moved to Utah, so we both flew home to Utah, started dating. We were engaged within basically 3 weeks, 6 weeks officially, and we're married like 6 months after we had gotten home from our missions, and here we are 14 years later with 6 kids. So the plan was 4 kids, and after 3 kids I was kind of done for a while, which then 2 years later we had our 4th kid. So but my first 3 are like 17 and 18 months apart, so 2 years was a big gap for us. And so we had our 4th child, and I was done. Like I didn't want to have more kids. I was like, I'm done with this. And homeschool happened in between that time, and so between our 4th and 5th kid. So I'll get to that in a minute. But then we ended up with a surprise baby almost 5 years after my 4th child was born. And it was very hard. And on top of that, he was a very, very hard baby. And he just needed mom a lot. He needed dad a lot. Like he just needed a lot of extra care, and it was very, very hard. And as soon as I got pregnant with him, I knew we were gonna have a 6th baby. And I knew I wanted it to be quick again after he was born. I didn't want years and years to go by. And luckily for me, I usually can get pregnant pretty quickly. And so 19 months later, we had another baby. So she's 8 weeks old. By the time you see this video, she will be 2 months old. And she is sleeping right now, so we'll see if she joins us or not, if she does wake up. But she has been a dream baby compared to him. She's so calm and just a happy baby all the time. She sleeps really well, like by herself. I couldn't lay him down at all, ever. Like he would just wake up and start screaming, and then he would scream and scream as you try to put him to sleep. He was just not a happy baby. Anyway, and now he's a crazy toddler. He's very, very loud and very into everything. He's just an insane toddler. But anyway, we're making it through. So right now the toddler is more trying than the 2-month-old baby. But so we have 6 kids. That's where we're at. So we homeschool the oldest 4 right now. We're homeschooling all of them in some sort of way. But as far as like sit down schoolwork type stuff, the oldest 4 are the ones that we homeschool. So how did we start homeschooling? Well, I have a degree in human development. That's what my bachelor's degree is in. And I love studying human development. If you look at like my book reviews on this channel, I read a lot of human development, parenting type books. It fascinates me. I just really, really love it. And when I was in college, I was taking a child socialization class. I think Socialization Across Childhood was maybe what it was called. Anyways, we were supposed to write a paper on a topic that we could either argue for or against. It didn't matter the topic as long as we picked a side. And so I picked homeschooling because I had had a negative family experience with homeschooling. And so I was on obviously the against homeschooling side. And as I started doing research, this was a long time ago, basically 14 years ago, not quite that long, but pretty close. I started researching it, and there wasn't a whole lot of research at that time. There's more now, but there was some, and most of it, if not almost all of it, was saying how good homeschooling is for kids. And So I was like, huh, as I wrote the paper and someone read it, they're like, wait, are you for or against? Because it was a conflicted paper. And so I changed my view and was for homeschooling. But then I never thought I would homeschool. First of all, it was never something that was like on my radar. I wasn't homeschooled or anything. It just wasn't like, I'm not gonna homeschool. And once I started having children, I was like, I'm definitely not gonna homeschool. I'm the one that is not crying on the first day of school or anything. I'm like, yeah, go to school, get away. And totally fine. Like my kids went to preschool. I still send them to preschool now just because it's so nice to have some time when we don't have the crazy 3 and 4-year-olds at home. But like my oldest went to kindergarten for a month. But I am the one that's just like, yes, send them away, send them away. And so I was never gonna homeschool. So we went to graduate school in Connecticut, and my husband got a PhD in economics from Yale. We moved to California for his first job. We lived like in the Monterey Bay area. And a lot of the school systems are not super great there unless you're right on the peninsula, which is extremely expensive to live. You know, especially we had 4 kids moving there, and there just wasn't a lot, there's not a lot of big houses or anything like that. And stuff that we could afford. And so we had to pick a different place, and the schools they're just not great. And we were trying to, pick the ones that were the best, and our oldest was starting kindergarten. And he had already had some behavioral struggles up to this point. And we had never had him tested for like autism or anything like that, but we knew there were some struggles. And so we were very upfront, my husband, especially with the principal, the school psych. He's the more diplomatic one than me. I'm just kind of blunt and to the point about most things. And so we talked to them about it. They all tried to work together. They had a few meetings and they did a few different things. I think in the video, I talk about my son being autistic. I'll try to remember to find it and link it down below. I go into more detail. I'm not gonna spend all this time talking about it here because this video would be very long, but you can already be, sitting doing something else while you're listening to me because it's more like podcast style today. But anyways, and so they were sort of helpful, I would say. They were not extremely helpful. We had a lot of issues in that first month, and I just could see my oldest starting to come home, and he didn't understand. Like, they would give him smiley faces or frowny faces depending on how he did that day. It was one of the systems they were trying to work with him specifically. And he would come home and just see, like, he's like, I have all these frowny faces. It must have been a bad day, but I thought I had a good day. And, he wasn't understanding that. His perspective of it was that it was okay. And eventually the school, this is all happening within a month, okay? Eventually the school was telling us that even if he was tested and ended up on the spectrum or other things, if there was other learning disabilities going on, they probably wouldn't change anything. They don't have aides in the classrooms. There was just not any extra help. They weren't willing to do anything. Basically, they were like shoving us out of the school. That's kind of what was happening. And so, it had been almost a month, and I had been thinking about homeschooling, which my husband knew I was not. I was not gonna do ever. And I brought it up to him, and he was like, oh, not in a bad way. Like, he was fine us homeschooling. He just never thought I would be okay with doing it. And knew it must be bad, right? If I'm the one bringing it up at this point and being like, I think we should just homeschool, we should pull him out of kindergarten and just homeschool him. And so I was like, okay, we'll let him finish this week of school. I think that's what we're gonna do. Well, towards the end of the week, it was Thursday, I think, and we get a call. They're like, you have to come get him now. He pushed a kid on the playground and we're suspending him. First of all, who in the heck suspends a kindergartner? I'm like, and how many other kids push each other all the time? Hello, they're kids. And he wasn't being malicious, right? He was just kind of playing, and that's how he thought you were supposed to play. And so I go get him and tell them that he is not coming back. Like, we're just pulling him out of school, and they didn't really care. You know, like, they were just like, great, like, whatever. So we pulled him out of school, and I wasn't ready to homeschool per se. You know, he was only in kindergarten, first of all, but I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare. I think I had started looking at stuff. I had a lot of friends that were homeschooling. We were in a military community, so there was a lot of people homeschooling, so I was asking them for ideas about homeschooling. And so I was trying to get a few things and start homeschooling, but we weren't quite ready yet, which I think was fine. You know, we could just all use a break to decompress from everything that had already been going on, and then we would start homeschooling. So that's what we did. I got a few things together. I got a math book. You know, we did some reading, and we started very basic things, hardly taking any time at all. And excuse me. And that was like that first year. That's what we did. And then we moved again to Utah. We live in northern Utah now, and my husband took a university job here, and he was working as a civilian for the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey Bay. And so it was a good job, but this one just was better. This ended up being a better situation for our family and all that, and it was a lot cheaper and things like that. So we ended up moving again, and even though now we live in better school districts, and like it would have been a fine environment, or at least a better environment to send our kids to public school, we have continued to homeschool. And this is our 7th year, which is insane to me. When I say that, I'm like, wait, I always have to count. I'm like, am I lying? Like, there's no way it's been that long, but it has, and it's crazy to me that it's been that long. And so my first 4, you know, I have from 6th grade now to 1st grade, those 4 are, and we just homeschool, and we've continued to do it. And one of the reasons we've continued to do it is because I've seen our family thrive doing it. So almost immediately, from pulling my oldest out of kindergarten, he started to improve and do better. Like, just his whole demeanor was just happier. It doesn't mean we didn't have hard days, and those first 2 years were extremely hard. There was many times where I was like, I'm just gonna throw in the towel and send him back to school, because I don't want to do this. I didn't sign up to do this. I signed up for my kids to be gone all day. That's what I signed up for. That's what I wanted. But that's not what God wanted for me and for our family. And it has just, we have thrived in this situation. And it is still hard, but it's become our new normal. This is just what we do, and this is our life revolves around homeschooling. And it's nice too, because my husband's schedule is pretty flexible with being a professor, and so he helps a lot too, or is around to help, because a few years after we moved here, it's been like 3 years now, I believe, we did get an official diagnosis that my son is on the autism spectrum. He's high functioning, if that's what you want to call it. And so there's different struggles there, you know, social struggles. He can be very aggressive sometimes, and he's getting bigger and stronger. So there's certain times when it's helpful to have another parent around. And so his schedule being flexible has been really nice. But so that's one of the reasons we've kept homeschooling, is because of that. And because I just like the environment. I feel like I don't know, I don't want to be mean to public school, and I'm not against public school in any sort of way. One of my husband's friends, who's also a professor at a different university, homeschooled their kids for a while, and he's like, your kids will be nicer. And socialization always comes up as a homeschool question, and I think it's silly, because first of all, kids learn how to socialize by who they're around all the time. And so if they're around you and saying nicer things, and you get to be a little bit more choosy about who they're around, then they grow up to be nicer humans. Not saying that public school kids can't be nice humans too, but it's just a little bit easier. Like, even I see some of the kids in our neighborhood, they can just be really mean, because you get in with those peer groups, and sometimes peers just aren't very nice to each other because they're learning from other kids that are their same age. And so they don't necessarily know how to respond well in situations. But I have that opportunity, and my husband has the opportunity to teach our kids how to respond well in situations and help them to cope and teach them what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And so they can learn that now instead of learning it later, at least hopefully learning it later if you're going to public school. So that's something else that I've like he's like, your kids are just gonna be nicer. And I feel like I see that sometimes people might say they're naive, but I also don't think knowing everything about the world and knowing all the words that you're not supposed to say and all the things that are mean, I don't think that's always a good thing. Like, why is that a bad thing not to know those things? And so those are some of the reasons that we've kept homeschooling. And then I always wanted, as far as like transitioning to YouTube, my husband started a YouTube channel about economics not too long after he moved here. And I always had wanted to do a blog or something, but I just there wasn't anything I was passionate enough about. I felt like it had to be about family, about human development, about Christ, something that I could reach out and share in a community. And I'm not I'm an introvert by nature. I don't have a whole lot of friends. I have a few good close friends, and it's just not natural for me to talk to a lot of people. And getting on here though is more natural, or speaking in a group. Like, I can get up and speak in church to a group, or like any other type of group. We've spoken to youth groups before, and it makes me nervous still, but I love it. And that doesn't bother me nearly as much as one-on-one talking to new people. And so I wanted something where I could do that. Like, I could share what I know. I don't know everything, but there are certain things that I really care about and I think are very important. And so that's why I started a YouTube channel, was to share how we homeschool, things that might be effective for us, to share a little bit of Christ out there in the world, and how we incorporate Christ into our home and different things like that. And so that's another motivating factor of why we've continued to homeschool, is because it helps me become better. Like, it's given me an avenue to get my voice out, I feel like, if that makes sense. And it allows us to talk about Christ throughout the whole day instead of just little bits. We're able to incorporate Christ a lot more into our day, which I'm really grateful for. So that's kind of all the things, right? Like, why we started homeschooling, why we've kept homeschooling, and then how that led to a YouTube channel. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was short enough to just give you a little overview of our life, our family, and help you get a glimpse a little bit more of what we're like and why we are here and why we continue to be on YouTube, why we continue to homeschool. And so if you enjoy these types of videos, remember to give me a thumbs up. And if you have questions you'd like me to answer for future videos, leave them down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.